Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Marie Kato. Polish authorities have seized a truck carrying 23 tons of illegal waste from Germany. While documents claimed it was transporting recyclable paper and cardboard, the reality was much dirtier, literally. Joining me to discuss what the garbage mafia are up to, I am now joined by TVP World's Jonathan Carter, who has been covering this story. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Marie. Nice to be here.
So maybe let's start with who and what the garbage mafia are and how do they operate?
Right, well, I mean, it's a kind of defined term that came about sort of 10 years or so ago for, well, a variety of groups. You know, I don't think it's a sort of mafia in the kind of sense of perhaps cartels, etc., that we think of, but just rather a bunch of disparate groups in Poland that are illegally taking waste and disposing of them in illegal methods, such as incineration or in landfill sites, or maybe just sort of dumping them in the forest. So it's quite a broad issue in Poland and quite a big problem. And yeah, how widespread that is,
hard to say.
Difficult to define.
But definitely more widespread than we would like it to be.
Absolutely.
So the garbage mafia have an intricate operation system by the looks of it. It's a dark underworld of illegal contracts. But more importantly, it's environmentally very dangerous. And often residents are unaware that these landfills are quite close by. It's dangerous to the water, the land that they, that perhaps, I don't know, that, you know, we could be I don't know, growing our fruit and veg next to. Who is responsible for cracking down on this?
Well, of course, there is an environmental agency in Poland, and you would say domestically that they are hold the key responsibility for this. But I think we need to look a bit more broadly into it and think about it in terms, more international terms. Now, the story you mentioned at the top of the discussion was about this illegal imported waste from Germany. And so the issue is a lot to do with what's coming from beyond the Polish borders into the country. And so I think the issue really is about how to deal with these things, with the rubbish that's coming in from abroad, the communication between different countries and how they deal with that. Now, this is being dealt with by the EU, as you would expect, and they have a certain responsibility for improving the communication lines and improving the effectiveness. And I think one of the main things is about how much checking they do that goes over the border. So at the moment, I mean, it's relatively small. It was estimated a few years ago that there's about 5 to 10% of these trucks that are coming, waste trucks are coming over the border, they're being checked. And so I think what needs to be worked on, and there has been pledges actually this year by EU officials to become more organised with it fundamentally, which means to give better tools, better funding, better staffing to deal with this. So I think, yeah, there is improving the domestic efficiency, but also looking more broadly as, you know, EU-wide.
But so you mentioned the environmental agency, so they need to look at things perhaps internally, domestically. We also have the border guard. We have the police, because there's a lot of criminal activity at the bottom of the structure that needs to actually look into what is happening in the country, at the borders, because it's the criminals really that are, you know, that have to actually that they need to be cracked down upon.
Well, yeah, I think maybe one of the big issues is to do with maybe the lack of punishment. So fundamentally, it's kind of dealt with as like an administrative sort of punishment as opposed to genuine criminal punishment. So perhaps the lack of deterrence is a bit of an issue there, you know. And if there's a lack of checks by customs coming over the border,
they could easily be blackmailed.
Quite possibly. You know, this is one of the allegations that maybe this system within Poland could potentially be corrupted. I think one thing also to look at is the motivation that's going from the waste that's coming, for example, from Germany. Now, data from, this is only the most recent data that we have officially, is actually all the way back from 2019. And it showed that not just illegal, but all waste, 61% of Poland's imported waste is coming from Germany. So I think that's one of the main things to look at first of all. So it's an interesting comparison to make, to say how much does it cost for each of Poland and Germany to deal with their waste. So in Germany, it's something like 200 to 500 euros per tonne to be either incinerated or put in a landfill. And in Poland, it's approximated at 30 euros. So you can see the motivation, both legally and illegally, is certainly for kind of, let's say, nefarious waste disposal management systems from Germany and other countries to bring their waste to Poland.
So clearly there's an issue with the waste management as well.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, you know, I think they need to be monitored a lot better. They seem to have a bit of a free rein at the moment. I mean,
if recycling is so much at the top of the list for EU countries, but clearly there's so much of it.
There is, I mean, you know, it's difficult to say whether, you know, how Poland, for example, recycles, how much at the bottom of that is. You know, there is a statistic which says that Poland, you know, it does approximately 45% of recycles 45% of its potentially recyclable goods, compared to the EU average of 55%. And that has been bandied about as a sort of potential issue with this kind of illegal waste disposal. I'm not sure it really cuts to the real core of this matter. You know, I think that it's fundamentally more to do with the systems at play rather than the amount of people who are recycling. Of course, if you have a recycling culture, who recycles, well, that's down to the individual. You know, the key issue here is, like we said, it's those responsible for the waste disposal, whether, you know, and how they are operating and how they are being monitored.
And how, when it comes to this illegal waste, I don't want to call it management, but all these places that are found in Poland, what do they look like? Where do you find them?
That's a good question.
Are they piles of waste? I
see what you mean. I thought you meant how did you find
No. How? What do they look like?
Well, you know, fundamentally you have...
Are they warehouses?
Well, fundamentally there are three ways of disposing waste, right? So there's the incineration, and there is landfill itself, which of course is a kind of euphemistic term because you're not actually filling in the land, you're just piling up the rubbish. And I think, very sadly, in Poland, one of the places where this rubbish is being dumped is in forests. And fundamentally, you're talking about large piles of rubbish, which is, you know, quite a disturbing thought, right?
But then if you're talking about incineration, I'm sorry, surely that will give you a clue that there's a massive pile of rubbish that is being burnt. And someone will come across it and will, I don't know, tell the local authorities that something like this is happening. Well, why is this not more of a widespread initiative to actually deal with this?
Well, I mean, without going too deep into the specifics, I think when we're talking about incineration, we are talking, I don't just mean a pile of rubbish set on fire and then somebody wanders off.
But that happens as well.
It does, but I mean, I'm more thinking, and I think it's worth putting it more in the context of this larger scale incineration. So this would be done at actual incineration plants, right? So, yeah, again, the issue is to do with who's monitoring these incineration plants, and you know, are they subject to the laws of the land? One interesting thing, actually, is that there was a meeting back in May of this year, a kind of EU orientated meeting, and it was to do with how they're going to deal with waste from now on. And one of there's several changes in policy, and I think the thing is that those won't actually come into effect until 2026. So May of 2026. So there's several elements to this which are going to start to be dealt with. So I think that there is something going on there. And as I said before, there's an issue with a lack of deterrence. Well, one of the things on those lists was a potential €500,000 fine for these waste traffickers.
I just wanted to ask, Poland is also quite a significant exporter of waste, isn't that right?
Yeah, well, I think every EU country is an exporter. But I think the reason why we're focused more on the imports is because that Poland is the second highest importer within the EU. I mean, the Netherlands is first. And actually, a lot of this derives from a change in policy by the Chinese in 2018, where they put a complete block on, regardless of legal or illegal, but on importing any waste. And this fundamentally changed the dynamics of how many countries and their companies within the private companies are dealing with that waste.
OK, so by the looks of it, there's just a lot of rubbish floating around.
Unfortunately so.
OK, Jonathan Cost, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
And that's all for this edition of World Talks. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.